Funko, the multi-million, soon-to-be billion-dollar pop culture merchandising monster, just destroyed $30 million worth of perfectly good product. What the hell happened? Why would the company destroy all that stock? While this video won't get into a detailed analysis of this particular decision, the short end of it is poor management and strategy from the company overall. Can the company be saved? Will they learn from mistakes? Or are they destined to be the next Beanie Baby? Personally, I don't believe the company's doomed or even on the decline. Week over week at Fly By Night, we consistently get new customers just starting this collecting hobby. But that doesn't redeem this idiotic decision from Funko, and they are definitely guilty of making some terrible strategic decisions overall. So, without further ado, this is my official list of 5 ways to improve Funko Pops. I've ranked these from what I feel are the least to most important, and we'll be counting down from 5 to 1. Number 5, no more lame chases. Chases, you know, the coveted 1 in 6 variant in a case of Pops that tend to jack up in value immediately. We all love variants, and in theory, chases are awesome. Not every character gets one, and they add to the collectability of the hobby by introducing harder to find alternate versions of characters. Admit it, the first time you got your hands on one of those coveted Funko Pops with the fancy chase sticker that looked like one of these, you got excited. The idea of rare alternate versions of characters in sets is fun. It adds to the hunt and makes collecting more enjoyable. Funko didn't invent this idea by any means. Trading cards have been doing this for years, with examples like foil versus non-foil cards, or full art card variants. Hell, even McFarlane Toys had bloody variants to their action figures. So if we all agree variants are a fun addition to the collecting hobby, what's the problem? The problem is Funko getting lazy with their chases. First of all, there's not nearly enough chases overall. Very rarely will new sets even feature chases anymore. With older sets, there was often a much higher chance that 1 or even 2 of the characters in the set would have a chase variant. Now, with newer sets, you're lucky to get one at all. So why is Funko being so stingy? I think part of the problem that is in lieu of chases, Funko would rather just do exclusive variants. The issue with that is that it makes them less accessible to the average collector. Funko can't just funnel all their best variants to Hot Topic, GameStop, and Target forever. The second problem besides the low chase frequency is the poor creativity in a lot of the new chases. It's bad enough Funko hardly do chases anymore, but the ones we're getting are just lazy and feel like afterthoughts. For some pop sets, there's standard chases that make total sense. Horror Pops often have bloody variants. NHL Pops come with little Stanley Cups. These make sense and are fine. You can keep doing these simple chases and no one is complaining. The issue is with chases that are barely different than the normal version. I think we can do a lot better than simply changing what a character is holding. And when people have to ask what the difference between the normal version and the chase is, you know you messed up. And don't get me started on chases that are actually lamer than the base version. The chase is supposed to be an upgraded version of the normal version, but there's lots of examples when it's actually the inferior version. Stop giving us simple glow-in-the-dark versions of characters as well. Making a pop glow-in-the-dark seems to be the most simple and easiest chase Funko produces, and they do it a lot. Sometimes it's cool, but not every time, Funko. You need to start being more creative with your chase variants. You've done it before, and you can do it again. Number 4, a quicker vaulting window. This one is definitely going to be a hot take, but hear me out. Funko needs to start vaulting Funko Pops faster. They literally just disposed of millions of dollars worth of inventory because they were sitting on too much product. Instead of constantly trying to reissue every Funko Pop in existence, a better approach would be to vault Funko Pops faster so they no longer have to produce those items. I get it. It's frustrating when you find out your favorite characters like Coraline are all vaulted and as such command higher prices on the secondary market. But Funko can't infinitely produce all characters forever. We saw what happens when they try to. So here's my proposal. After new sets are released, if sales are good, for things like Stranger Things, as an example, Funko can reissue the set 1 to 2 more times. But after Pops have been reissued a few times, they're automatically vaulted. If new sets don't sell well though, they should just instantly be vaulted. I don't even understand why Funko hesitates vaulting some sets. If they sold like shit to begin with, that's not going to change. Are they really holding out hope that properties are suddenly going to get hot again and the Pops will magically start flying off the shelves? Not all licenses and franchises are equal. Gilligan's Island is not going to outsell a new Harry Potter set. And if pops are vaulted faster, it will help Funko stop producing lesser sets and focus on new licenses or even expand older lines that deserved larger sets to begin with. There's tons of characters from as early as 2010 that still aren't vaulted. That's ridiculous. I get that characters like Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees are always going to sell, but instead of constantly reissuing the same characters over and over again and being forced to carry an unreasonably large inventory, Funko should just vault the damn characters and move on. And here's a crazy idea. How about a community voting board where collectors can vote on characters they'd like new versions of? For sets like Coraline that have very high values, Funko could produce new versions of the characters to allow newer collectors a chance to get their favorite characters without going broke. But while we're on the subject of redoing older Funko Pops, number 3, stop reissuing already released characters. Okay, I literally just said Funko should consider doing new versions of characters if there's enough demand from the community for it, and now I'm saying the exact opposite. What I am specifically referring to here is sets like The Godfather that were perfectly fine already and not really in need of an updated version. These two sets were only 5 years apart. Was there really that much demand for an updated version of this set? And now we have to acknowledge a huge elephant in the room: the secondary market. In order for something to really be a collectible, it needs to be bought, traded, and sold on a secondary market free from the original manufacturer and retailers who distributed it. Funko needs to accept that stores like Fly By Night are going to make money buying and selling used Funko Pops that they won't see any money from. Not only does Funko need to accept this, they need to not try and fight it. Secondary markets are crucial for keeping a collectible in demand and relevant. Stores like ours that feature a literal wall of rare and expensive pops encourage the sale of new sets. By maintaining a healthy secondary market, Funko will continue to sell through their new releases as collectors hope for a future value increase on their pops. Without getting into the philosophical or moral issues of collecting, I'll be frank, collectors love it when the items they own increase in value. Whether you're collecting to simply cash out at a later date or have no desire to ever sell anything from your collection, there is no sweeter feeling than seeing items you own increase in value. Let's go back to the example I used of the Godfather set. So there was already a Godfather set from 2017. The original set was Vito Corleone, Michael, Fredo, and Sonny. The updated set from 2022 featured only Vito, Michael, and Sonny this time around. The supposed 50th anniversary version is actually a smaller and less complete set than the original. So why even do it in the first place? So this set does one thing I hate that Funko does, and one thing that I actually agree with. Okay, so here's the problem. Let's say you have a Funko Pop like Vito Corleone. It's a timeless character from one of the most beloved films of all time. There's pretty much always going to be someone that wants this character in their collection. But you're Funko and you vaulted this character in 2017. Fans complain as the cost of the pop increases on the secondary market, and so you produce a new version of the character in 2022 that's almost identical to the original version. Problem solved, right? Well, not really, because here's the problem. While you've pleased the newer collectors by making this character more affordable and accessible, you've also just pissed off any older collector that paid a high price to obtain this pop, as well as devalued the original, and also pissed off those people that own it. Why should Funko care though? The only people making money off the sale of old pops are sleazy stoners like me, right? Well, Funko should care, because without a strong secondary market, they would cease to be relevant. And if you piss off collectors one too many times by devaluing their older pops, they're just gonna eventually get fed up and leave the hobby altogether. So what's the alternative? How do you satisfy both the new collector that just wants their favorite characters at a reasonable price, and the older collector who doesn't want their pops to devalue? How about instead of releasing a new version of the character that's hardly any different than the original, you produce a new version that features a completely unique design, so the original and new versions are very different. And while I hate that Funko produced a second Vito Corleone that's essentially the same as the original version, thereby making it pretty pointless, I love the second Michael Corleone they made. The original featured Michael in a suit and more of a mobster aesthetic, while the newer version used Michael's look when he's hiding in Italy. The two pops are completely different from one another, but still feature the same character. New collectors can get a Michael Corleone pop at a cheap price, while the original pop is likely to retain much of its original value due to the unique design, pleasing older collectors. And guess what? If the newer version is in fact distinct from the original version, older collectors are also going to buy that one too. This is a much better way of handling vaulted characters. You try and help new collectors while avoiding punishing and ostracizing your older collector base. It also forces Funko to get more creative with their designs. You could vault characters like Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees and then later produce completely different versions of those characters, maybe even from key moments in the franchise instead of a generic version. Number 2. Overdoing some characters. Okay, let's talk about timeless characters for a second. Characters like Batman, Harry Potter, Spider-Man, Mickey Mouse, these are characters that are likely to last the test of time, always present in the current zeitgeist, and always relevant as household names. It's a safe bet that there will always be people that want merchandise associated with these characters. So it makes sense that Funko would produce an infinite amount of variants for characters like these. But when is enough and the market too oversaturated? That's not an easy answer, but I think Funko needs to start making an effort to figure that out. Let's use some examples. Batman variants. These are awesome, and there's so many unique and cool variations of the Caped Crusader to make a pop of. Same goes for Spider-Man and Mickey Mouse. But what about a character like Jack Skellington or Stitch? I think both those characters have pretty much reached their limits for unique pop variants at this point. Is anyone even buying these new Jack Skellington pops? They certainly don't sell well for us. Funko needs to start recognizing that some characters don't need a million versions of them. At a certain point, you're just producing redundant variants of the same characters. Probably the biggest set guilty of this is the Pop Marvel category. How many goddamn versions of the Avengers do we need at this point? Unless there's a huge difference between the variants, we don't need constant revisions for every single new Marvel movie. Seriously, look at the 3 different Ant-Man sets that have come out. They're so similar. You could pull those out of the package and I wouldn't know which version belonged to which movie. So why even bother producing these? Once a character has pretty much been nailed with a definitive Funko Pop, unless you have truly unique variations to produce, stop making new ones. Was Doctor Strange holding a shovel really unique enough to warrant a pop of him for the No Way Home set? If there isn't any source material to justify new pop variants, then don't force it. A perfect example is the lame-ass chrome versions of characters that literally no one is asking for. It's the exact same figure, but in a chrome version. That's just cheap, greedy strategy trying to pump out other versions of characters. Number 1, no more pointless sets. This is, without a doubt, Funko's biggest problem right now. Part of what put Funko on the map was their incredible amount of licenses and brands they dealt with. Almost any character you could think of was represented as a Funko Pop. Even real life people like sports players, musicians, and politicians got the Funko treatment. And while it's awesome that you can basically get a Funko Pop of any character you want, there's simply some characters and properties that don't need merchandise. I'm sure the toy companies get some sort of kickback from studios for making merchandise for properties that haven't even released yet. Because if they're not, then why the hell are the toy companies doing this? You could say, well, the companies are simply gambling this new movie or TV show is going to be a smash hit, and they want to cash in on that with merchandise while the property is hot. But wouldn't it be smarter to wait for the movie to actually be released, gauge the popularity, and then make a decision on whether to produce toys based on it or not? Let's use Bullet Train as an example. Was it a slick action movie that reviewed pretty well? Sure. Is it an instant timeless classic? No. So why did Funko make a set of pops for it? How about Valerian? Remember that sci-fi flop? No, hardly anybody else does either, but it got a Funko Pop set, and so did Ready Player One. And Abominable, and a bunch of other random movies that not a lot of people give a shit about. Funko needs to stop making pops for properties that don't deserve them. Is anyone going to give a shit about the Wolf Funko Pop from Bullet Train in 5 years? He's hardly even in that movie. Funko is literally producing pointless plastic that will just end up in landfills. Stop producing Funko Pops for movies that haven't even released yet, and stop producing Funko Pops for movies that have such small fan bases you're going to overproduce merchandise for it. The smarter move for new Funko Pop sets is to focus on older properties with strong fan bases, or expand pre-existing sets that could use expanding with more characters. There's no shortage of those. If Funko wants to be the toy company that makes figures for every single character that exists, that's fine, but there's a consequence to that. People only have so much money to spend. They're going to prioritize characters and properties they care about more, and you'll inevitably end up with a bunch of figures that no one gives a shit about. It diminishes the Funko brand overall and leads to headlines like these. If Funko wants to remain one of the main toy manufacturers going forward and stay relevant as a collectible category, they need to smarten up and stop trying to go for the quick buck when the long-term investment is what they really need. And there you have it. That's my top 5 ways to fix Funko Pops. Or rather, improve Funko Pops. Hope you enjoyed my list. You'll probably disagree with every single point I made. Feel free to sound off in the comments. This video was of course sponsored and produced by Fly By Night Movies, Games and Toys, which is located right in the heart of downtown Oshawa, Ontario, Canada. Yes, we are located in Canada. It's only about a 30-40 minute drive outside of Toronto. We are without a doubt the #1 Funko Pop shop in the GTA. Come see why we're worth the drive.